This video is to show the installation process for the CVIO board if you want to fit a CVIO after purchase to a machine that was bought in the basic spec. First thing you need to do obviously is open the case. There are actually two different types of case in the production Cirklons. You can tell the difference by looking at the front panel. The first two runs of production you'll see a single screw at the centre of the panel. Later production you'll see two screws on either side of the display window. I'll show you what difference that makes when we come to that point. First thing to do is to remove the rear blanking panel. This will either be in the bottom of your Cirklon or in the back if your Cirklon's in rack mount configuration. This one's obviously a desktop, so we'll take this panel off at the bottom. On the Cirklons that have the single screw on the front panel, there will also be an additional screw at this point on the rear panel that you'll need to remove. The other difference with the earlier Cirklons is that you'll see there's the single screw there and there's also a screw in the middle of the rear panel. It's that screw on the rear panel or on the blanking plate that you would remove to remove the rear panel from an earlier unit. On the ones with two screws on either side of the display, it's those two screws that need to come out. And then four screws from the four corners of the panel. You might find when you come to remove the rear panel that it's a little bit stuck. At this point there's a sealing tape around the LCD display to stop dust getting into the display that sometimes sticks onto the panel a wee bit, so it might be a little awkward to peel that off. So lift the panel round. You'll see in later units there's a single cable joining the main board onto the input-output board, and there are retaining clips on either end of these cable. If you loosen these clips and the connector on the main board, the plug will lift out and your rear panel will come off. The rear panel now, there'll be a blanking plate where the CVIO board is to be fitted. Just remove the screws to take that blanking plate off. Some of the blanking plates have captive nuts on them. Some of them may have loose nuts and washers on the back, so just pay attention to which type you have and don't let the nuts fall inside the machine. Okay, once you've got the blanking plate off, you can take your CVIO board, which should come with a cable attached. It just fits in the components in the upward face of the board. The same screws that held in the blanking plate go into the mounting brackets on either side of the connector socket. It can be a wee bit fiddly to get the screws into the threads. Make sure you get them in the right place and don't over tighten them, they just need to be tightened enough to nip on the panel. Okay, then you can bring your Cirklon back. On all the later units there are two different types of the CVIO board as well. Another video will show you the connections for the earlier ones. The only difference with the earlier ones was that the connector on the motherboard was slightly further down and there was a separate power supply connector that went over to the power board to power supply the CVIO board. But in the later version we did away with that cable and run the power through the ribbon connector. And we also moved the connector on the main board up so that it's easier to get at. So it's just a case of pushing that connector in there so that the latches latch and hold it tight, and then reconnecting the wide cable so that the I/O board is connected in. And then if you're going to desktop, just tuck the cable in round there, bring the panel up, place it on the back and refit the screws. And after that, refit the blanking plate. Or if you're wanting to put it on a rack mount unit, the only difference is that this panel, you might need to just adjust the cable, and that panel just screws onto the rear there. Not put all those screws in just now. And then the blanking plate in rack mount mode also has a flange with these two holes, and the same set of screws, exactly the same set of screws, mount this plate in that position as had mounted this plate when it was in the desktop setup. I'll just swap this one round back to desktop. So the cable's just have to go in the other direction. That's all the screws in, CVIO installed, ready to go.